Princess Asha of Virex Prime had been taught from childhood how to recognize a threat. Threats stood straight. They met your eyes without apology. They carried themselves as if the universe owed them space. Carl Lorson did none of these things. He arrived late to his own diplomatic reception, breathless and red-faced, one shoe slightly untied, bowing too many times as he crossed the obsidian floor of the imperial court. His datapad slipped from his hands and skidded across the polished stone, coming to rest at the foot of the emperor's throne. The court laughed. Asha did not, though she felt the reflex tug at her mouth, the instinctive dismissal. Harmless, her mind supplied automatically. The word settled easily over him, like a label placed on a storage crate. Carl Lorson was human, short by Virexi standards, narrow through the shoulders, with soft features and expressive eyes that seemed perpetually apologetic. His dark hair refused to stay neatly combed, as if even gravity found him unconvincing. "Your Imperial Majesty," he said, voice thin with nerves, I sincerely apologize for the delay. The transport schedules were somewhat confusing. He smiled, uncertain, as if expecting to be punished for existing. Emperor Threxion regarded him with cool, multifaceted eyes. The Emperor was vast, plated in ceremonial armor grown from living metal, his presence filling the hall like pressure before a storm. "And you are the representative Earth sends to bind our alliance?" Threxion asked. Carl swallowed. Asha could see his throat move from across the dais. "Yes, Majesty. I am deeply honored, truly, incredibly honored." Another ripple of amusement moved through the court. Asha felt irritation spark beneath her ribs, not at Carl, but at the laughter itself. There was something indecent about so many powerful beings taking pleasure in one person's discomfort. She folded her hands in her lap and studied him more closely. His eyes flicked around the room constantly. Not in panic, she recognized panic, but in something more deliberate, as if he were taking inventory, counting exits, measuring distances. When his gaze passed briefly over her, it did not linger. It did not appraise her beauty, or her status, or her value as a political object. It slid past her like she was furniture. That, more than his clumsiness, made her pause. The marriage contract was read aloud in full ceremonial language, rich with obligations and bloodline clauses. Asha listened as she had listened to 100 political decrees before it. Calmly, attentively, without illusion. She was not offended by the arrangement. She was an imperial princess. Her body and name had always been tools of statecraft. The logic was obvious. Earth needed protection. Virex needed alliances beyond its hostile neighbors. A human consort posed no threat to succession, no risk of internal power struggles. Safe, her advisors had called it. Asha wondered if Carl knew how little danger everyone believed him to be. When the Emperor asked him to swear loyalty, Carl stepped forward too quickly and nearly stumbled again. He caught himself with an awkward laugh, then dropped to one knee. "I swear," he said, placing a hand over his heart, "by my life and name, to serve the imperial throne of Virex. To protect the Emperor and his line. To act always in good faith." His voice shook, but the words did not. Asha leaned forward slightly. She had heard oaths spoken in fear before. They rushed, tangled, tripped over themselves. Carl's vow did not. It was measured, precise, every syllable placed carefully, like a blade laid flat on a table. When he rose, their eyes met again. This time, he did not look away immediately. For the briefest instant, so short she might have imagined it, his expression emptied, the nerves vanished, the uncertainty burned off like fog under sudden heat. There was nothing there, no warmth, no humor, no softness, just awareness. Then he blinked, smiled too quickly, and managed to knock his elbow into a ceremonial torch stand, sending it clattering. The moment shattered. Asha sat back, heart beating faster than it had any right to. They were married 3 days later. The ceremony took place beneath the open sky, Virex Prime's twin suns casting overlapping shadows across the stone amphitheater. Asha wore the crown veil of her mother's line, its filaments humming faintly against her temples. Carl wore formal human attire modified for Virexi protocol, though it hung slightly wrong on his frame. He nearly dropped the ceremonial blade when handing it to her. She caught it instinctively, fingers closing around the hilt before it fell. Their hands touched. Carl flinched. "I'm sorry," he whispered, far too softly for the audience. "I didn't mean." "Thank you." Asha searched his face. Up close, she could see faint scars along his knuckles, old and pale, half hidden beneath the skin. Not the kind earned by paperwork or diplomatic travel. She filed the observation away without comment. The vows were spoken. The bond was sealed. The court applauded. Just like that, she was married to a man no one feared. Their private quarters overlooked the eastern spires of the palace. When the doors sealed behind them, the ceremonial noise cut off abruptly, leaving a ringing silence. Carl stood awkwardly near the entrance, hands clasped behind his back like a child waiting to be scolded. "I want to be clear," Asha said, removing the crown veil and setting it aside. "This arrangement does not require affection. Only cooperation." Relief flooded his face so openly it startled her. "Yes, of course. Thank you. I mean, not thank you, but I appreciate the clarity." She studied him as she moved past, noting how his eyes tracked her path automatically, never lingering where they shouldn't, never dropping entirely. Alert without being invasive. "You may call me Asha in private," she said. He hesitated. "And you may call me Carl. If you wish." There was something careful in that phrasing. "Not please do, but if you wish." She nodded. "Very well." An uneasy pause followed. "Will you require guards?" Carl asked. "I am the Emperor's daughter," she replied. "There are always guards." "Yes," he said. "Of course." He did not relax. That night, Asha slept lightly, senses tuned to unfamiliar rhythms. At some point hours later, she wasn't sure. She woke with the uncanny certainty of being watched. Carl sat in a chair near the window, silhouetted against the starlight. He was awake, not restless, not fidgeting, watching. "The bed is large enough," she said quietly. He startled, rising at once. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. I just habit." "Habit of what?" He paused too long. "Travel," he said finally. "Old habit." She let it go, but as she drifted back toward sleep, Asha realized something that tightened her chest. She had not heard him move at all. That was the first night she dreamed of blood on marble floors. She told herself it meant nothing. She was wrong. The first assassination attempt did not announce itself with alarms or screaming. It arrived quietly, disguised as routine. Asha learned later that this was how most deaths came in the imperial court, not with spectacle, but with assumption. Assumption that protocol was followed. That schedules were correct. That what had always been safe would remain so. She was dressing when the palace trembled. Not violently, just enough to make the crystal lamps sway and the floor hum beneath her bare feet. Asha stilled, senses sharpening. The tremor came again, closer this time, followed by a distant metallic shriek. She was reaching for her calm when the door burst open. Carl stood there, breathing hard. "Get down," he said. The words were wrong, too sharp, too immediate. Before she could respond, he crossed the room in 3 long strides, seized her by the waist, and hauled her behind the reinforced pillar near the viewport. The motion was decisive, practiced nothing like the careful, apologetic man she knew. A heartbeat later, the glass wall facing the launch spire exploded inward. Shards screamed through the air where she had been standing moments before. The pressure wave knocked the breath from her lungs. Carl twisted with it, turning his body so his back took the brunt of the blast. They hit the floor hard. Asha gasped, ears ringing, the taste of ozone and blood filling her mouth. She was dimly aware of Carl above her, one arm braced protectively over her head, the other pressed against his side. He did not cry out. Security alarms finally began to howl. "Carl," she said hoarsely. "Carl, are you?" "I'm fine," he said too quickly. He tried to push himself up and failed. Asha's hand came away from his side slick and red. "You're bleeding." He laughed weakly. "I seem to be doing that a lot lately." She stared at him, at the way his face had gone pale beneath the blood spatter, at the way his teeth clenched against pain he refused to voice. "Don't move," she ordered, louder now, slipping into command without thinking. "Medical will be." "I need you to stay here," he interrupted. She looked at him sharply. "The Emperor's shuttle," he said. "That blast, it wasn't meant for us." Understanding struck like ice water. Her father. Asha surged to her feet. "Then I'm going to him." Carl's hand closed around her wrist. The grip was firm, unyielding. "No," he said, "you're not." She stared down at him, stunned not by the refusal, but by the certainty in his voice. "Let go," she said quietly. He hesitated. Something flickered across his expression, conflict, calculation, and then he released her at once, fingers opening as if burned. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have." Asha didn't wait to hear the rest. She ran. The eastern launch spire was chaos. Smoke poured from the Emperor's private shuttle, its hull scorched and partially breached. Guards swarmed the platform, weapons raised, shouting overlapping reports. Asha shoved through them, ignoring calls to stop. She found her father standing amid the wreckage, uninjured, furious, and very much alive. Relief nearly buckled her knees. What happened? She demanded. Sabotage, Threction said coldly, a timed plasma charge embedded in the launch cradle. Whoever planted it knew exactly when we would depart. And Carl? She asked before she could stop herself. Threction's gaze sharpened. Your husband intercepted the blast. Asha turned. Carl sat on the edge of the platform now, medics working quickly around him. His jacket had been cut away, exposing his torso. A long, narrow burn ran from his ribs to his shoulder, angry red against pale skin. Too narrow. Plasma injuries spread. They cauterized irregularly. This wound was clean, almost controlled. Carl caught her looking and smiled faintly. She should have felt only gratitude. Instead, unease coiled in her stomach. Much later, the court declared the incident a tragic but failed attack. An internal investigation was opened. Rewards were offered. Suspects quietly disappeared. Carl was praised publicly for his bravery. He accepted the accolades with visible discomfort, deflecting attention, insisting it was luck, poor footing, wrong place at the wrong time. Asha sat beside him through it all, hands folded, smile fixed. She did not believe in luck. That night, she went to see him in the medical wing. Carl lay propped against the bed, bare-chested, a translucent seal covering the wound. He looked smaller without his suit, narrower somehow, the angles of his body sharper than she'd expected. You should be resting, she said. So should you, he replied. It's been a day. She crossed the room and sat beside him. Why were you awake? She asked. He blinked. What? The explosion, she said. You were already moving. You knew. His mouth opened, then closed again. I heard something, he said finally. A sound that didn't belong. That was enough for you to throw yourself between me and a blast meant for my father? He looked away. I made a promise. The answer was true and incomplete. Asha felt it instinctively. She reached out, hesitated, then rested her fingers lightly on the edge of the medical seal. Carl tensed under her touch, muscles tightening automatically before he seemed to remember himself. You could have died, she said. I didn't. That's not an answer. He met her eyes again. There was no humor there now. No self-deprecation. No, he agreed quietly. It isn't. They sat in silence for a long moment, the air between them thick with words neither of them spoke. Finally, Carl said, you should know. I didn't intercept the blast by accident. Her breath caught. He raised a hand quickly. I mean, I was closer than your father. That's all. Proximity, not skill. Asha studied his face, the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes tracked her reactions with unsettling precision. She stood. Rest, she said again. We'll speak later. As she turned to leave, she paused at the doorway. Carl, she said without looking back. Thank you. He did not reply immediately. When he did, his voice was very soft. You're welcome, Asha. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she replayed the moments again and again, the speed of his movement, the way he'd known where to place his body, the shape of the wound that should have killed him. By morning, she had a question she could not dismiss. Who, exactly, had she married? The second assassination attempt did not involve explosions. It involved wine. Asha knew this because poison always preferred subtlety. Violence drew attention, toxins rewrote endings quietly, letting history pretend nothing had been wrong at all. The Emperor's convocation feast was an ancient ritual, older than the palace itself. Alliances were reaffirmed, rival houses smiled through sharpened teeth. Every movement was governed by protocol so old it felt like instinct. Asha sat to her father's right. Carl sat to hers. He wore formal black this time, human tailoring adapted precisely to Vyrexy norms. The fabric did not wrinkle when he moved. She noticed that. She noticed many things now. Servants approached with the ceremonial wine. Carl stiffened. It was not obvious. No gasp, no sudden movement, just a tightening through his shoulders, as though some internal calculation had concluded. The goblet reached the Emperor. Carl's elbow struck the table. The impact was clumsy, loud. The goblet tipped, shattered against the floor, dark liquid blooming across the stone like spilled ink. The hall went silent. I'm so sorry, Carl blurted, already half rising. I didn't mean to. Your Majesty, please forgive me. Murmurs rippled outward. Annoyance, amusement, a few sharp looks. Asha did not move. She stared at the spreading stain, at the way the wine smoked faintly where it touched the floor. The Emperor lifted a hand. Enough. Guards moved instantly. The spilled wine was tested within moments. Poison. Lethal. Fast-acting. Designed to paralyze higher neural functions before pain could register. Carl sat very still while accusations flew and servants were dragged away for questioning. He looked pale, stricken, humiliated. The perfect picture of an incompetent consort who had saved the emperor through sheer stupidity. Everyone saw what they expected. Everyone except Asha. She had been watching his hands. They had not shaken. The official inquiry took hours. Carl was dismissed with curt gratitude and clear irritation. When they finally returned to their quarters, the palace felt different, tenser, quieter, like a held breath. Carl loosened his collar and sank onto a chair, scrubbing a hand down his face. Well, he said weakly, that could have gone better. Asha did not respond. She walked to the table where the ceremonial blade rested, an heirloom weapon, sharpened to molecular precision, meant only for ritual display. She picked it up. Carl looked at it, then at her. Something in his posture changed. Not fear, readiness. Do you know, Asha said calmly, how many assassination attempts my father has survived? He swallowed. I imagine more than most. 23, she said. Before today. She turned the blade in her hand. Let the light catch its edge. None involved spilled wine. Carl watched her closely now. Too closely. Are you accusing me of something? He asked. No, she said. I'm asking a question. She took one step closer. You knew. His lips parted, then pressed together again. I had a suspicion, he said carefully. That the wine was poisoned. Yes. And instead of warning anyone, you knocked it over. Yes. Why? He hesitated. Asha waited. Because, he said finally, warning people creates panic. Panic creates chaos. Chaos creates opportunities for whoever planned it to escape. A reasonable answer. Too reasonable. She took another step closer. And you're certain you only had a suspicion? His gaze flicked to the blade. Back to her face. I was wrong once, he said quietly. Long ago. People died because I hesitated. The words landed heavier than they should have. Asha lowered the blade slightly. Is that why you don't sleep? She asked. Carl's breath caught. She watched his defenses scramble, the mask reforming just a fraction too late. I sleep, he said. You rest, she corrected. There's a difference. Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. Finally, Carl let out a slow breath. I don't want to lie to you, he said. But there are things I can't explain. Why not? Because once you know them, he said, voice barely above a whisper, you won't be safe. Asha felt something twist sharply in her chest. Not fear. Understanding. She set the blade back on the table. Then don't explain, she said. But don't insult me by pretending you're helpless. His eyes widened just slightly. She turned away before he could respond. The third attempt came 2 days later. It was not aimed at the Emperor. It was aimed at her. Asha was in the Eastern Archive wing, reviewing trade concessions with 3 minor houses whose loyalties shifted with the tides. The chamber was quiet, insulated against sound, its walls lined with living crystal that recorded and replayed centuries of imperial memory. She preferred it here. Fewer eyes, fewer assumptions. Carl was not with her. That alone should have warned her. The sensation came first, an almost imperceptible pressure change, the way air tightens before a storm breaks. The hairs along her nape lifted. Asha rose from her seat. The first bolt struck the space where her head had been a second earlier, embedding itself in the crystal wall with a vicious hiss. The second shattered the table. The third she didn't see at all. Something hit her from the side, hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. They went down together, rolling behind a stone plinth as the archive erupted in alarms. Asha twisted instinctively, clawing for leverage, preparing to strike. Carl, she breathed. He was already moving, not scrambling, not reacting, executing. He had one arm around her shoulders, forcing her flat, his body angled precisely to shield her. His other hand came up holding a compact weapon she had never seen before, sleek, unfamiliar, humming faintly with contained violence. He fired once. The sound was wrong, not loud, not quiet, final. Whatever had been firing on them stopped. Carl didn't look to confirm. He was already scanning, eyes sharp, posture low, counting angles. He shifted them again, rolling her fully beneath the plinth, placing her where no line of sight could reach. Stay, he said, not please. Not gently. Stay. She stayed. Footsteps thundered in the corridor seconds later, guards, shouting, chaos flooding in far too late to matter. By the time they reached them, Carl was on one knee, weapon gone, hands empty, breath uneven. The mask was back. Your Highness, he said shakily, I'm so sorry, are you hurt? Asha stared at him. Her pulse thundered in her ears, not from fear, but from the abrupt recalibration of everything she thought she knew. She was uninjured, not by chance, not by luck, by design. The guards swarmed, weapons raised, questions firing in every direction. Carl was pulled back, inspected, scanned, waved through with hurried apologies. The device embedded in the wall was identified as a long-range kinetic penetrator, illegal, rare, expensive. Targeted, precise, personal. Later, much later, when the archive wing was sealed and the incident already being rewritten into something less damning, Asha stood alone in their quarters, staring out over the city. She felt him enter behind her before she heard the door. "Don't," she said quietly. Carl stopped. "Don't pretend that was instinct," she continued. "Don't tell me you got lucky. Don't tell me you panicked." Silence. She turned. Carl stood a few paces back, hands visible, posture carefully neutral. But his eyes were awake. "I wasn't supposed to be there," he said at last. Asha laughed once, sharp and humorless. "That's your defense?" "No," he said. "That's the truth." She crossed the room slowly, deliberately. "He didn't retreat, didn't advance. You disarmed a professional assassin in under 3 seconds, she said. "With a weapon I have never seen logged in the Imperial Armory." "Yes, you positioned my body without asking," she went on, voice steady, with an accuracy that suggests training specifically in protective extraction. "Yes, you neutralized the threat without alerting them to your location. Yes," her voice dropped, "and then you let them see you bleed." Something in his face finally shifted. "Just a crack, because," he said quietly, "they already believe what they want to believe." "And what is that?" Asha asked. "That I'm harmless," Carl said, "that I'm an inconvenience, a joke, a human who tripped into history by accident." He met her gaze fully now. "That belief keeps you alive." The room felt very small. Asha folded her arms not defensively, but to anchor herself. "You said knowing the truth would make me unsafe." "Yes, and yet," she said, "someone just tried to kill me." Carl's jaw tightened. "You weren't the primary target," he said. "You were leverage." "Against you?" she asked. "No," he said, "against your father." Asha absorbed that in silence. Then, softly, "And you?" He hesitated. "For me," he said, "it was confirmation." "Of what?" "That they've realized," he said, "marrying you didn't make me weak." Asha stepped closer. "Then what did it make you?" For a long moment, Carl said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, stripped of apology, stripped of pretense. "It made me visible." Asha looked at the man the universe had handed her as a safe choice. At the quiet, watchful thing beneath the mask. And for the first time since her childhood, she felt something dangerously close to exhilaration. The official conclusion was swift. A rogue contractor. A foreign house acting without sanction. Regrettable, but contained. Asha listened to the briefing with half her attention while watching Carl from the corner of her eye. He stood behind her chair, hands folded, posture deferential. The picture of a chastened consort who had once again been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He nodded when appropriate, looked suitably pale, but he positioned himself so that no one could stand directly behind her. No one commented on it. Afterward, as the chamber emptied and the doors sealed, Emperor Threction studied Carl in silence. "You attract danger," the Emperor said at last. Carl dipped his head. "I regret that deeply, Majesty." "You regret many things," Threction replied. "Tell me, do you bring this chaos with you from Earth, or did you learn it here?" Carl's answer was immediate. "Earth." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, facets catching the light. "Interesting," he said, "because the weapon recovered today does not originate from your world." Carl did not look surprised. "I wouldn't know," he said mildly. "I didn't see it clearly." Asha felt the lie pass between them like a held breath. Threction leaned back. "You may go." Carl bowed and retreated, footsteps light, measured. When the doors closed behind him, the Emperor turned to his daughter. "He is either exactly what he appears," Threction said, "or something far more dangerous." Asha met her father's gaze. "You don't keep harmless things alive in this court." Threction's mandibles flexed. "No," he agreed, "you don't." That night, Asha woke to absence. The bed beside her was empty. She lay still, listening. Nothing. No footfalls. No movement. No breath. She rose silently, slipping into a robe, senses extended. The quarters were dark, lights dimmed to night cycle. She moved room to room until she found him on the balcony. Carl stood barefoot on the stone, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. He wasn't looking at the city. He was watching the sky. Asha stopped just inside the threshold. "You should wear boots," she said. Carl startled, not violently, but enough to tell her he hadn't expected her. He turned, then relaxed. "Sorry," he said, "didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't," she lied. She stepped out beside him. The air was cool, carrying the faint metallic scent of the upper spires. Below them, Virex Prime glowed with ordered brilliance. You always choose high ground, she observed. Carl smiled faintly. Old habit. She leaned against the railing. You're going to have to stop using that phrase. Which one? Old habit. He exhaled slowly. I'll try. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Asha said, when the bolt fired today, you moved before I did. Carl said nothing. You didn't look for the shooter, she continued. You looked for the angle. Still nothing. That's not how guards are trained, she said. They identify the threat. You prioritized trajectory. Carl closed his eyes briefly. On Virex, Asha went on calmly, only 2 groups trained that way. Imperial assassins, and people trained to counter them. She turned to face him fully. You're neither, she said. So what does that leave? Carl opened his eyes. For a moment, she thought he might lie again. Instead, he said, it leaves someone who learned the hard way. Where? She asked. Not here. Under whose command? A pause. No one's, he said quietly. Not anymore. That was new. Asha studied him, the bare forearms marked with faint, overlapping scars, the way his weight rested on the balls of his feet even now, ready. You don't wear any symbols, she said. No insignia, no cultural markers. That's unusual for a diplomat. It was encouraged, he replied. By whom? Carl's jaw tightened. People who didn't want to be remembered. The answer sent a chill through her. Asha turned back to the city. My court will keep testing you. I know. They'll escalate. I know. And eventually, she said softly, they'll stop believing you're harmless. Carl nodded once. That's when it gets dangerous. For you? She asked. For everyone else, he said. She looked at him sharply. You're not afraid of dying, she said. No, he admitted, but you're afraid of being known. Yes, Asha considered that. Then, if I order you to tell me who you are, would you? Carl met her eyes. Yes, even if it puts me at risk? Yes. The honesty landed heavier than any evasion. Asha looked away first. Then I won't order it, she said. Not yet. Relief flickered across his face, quick, unguarded, gone almost instantly. But, she added, you will stop underestimating me. He gave a faint, rueful smile. I haven't, not once. She believed him. That realization settled deep and unsettling in her chest. 2 days later, House Mareth sent a gift. Asha knew it was a threat the moment she saw the courier. Carl knew before the doors even opened. Don't touch it, he said sharply as the ornate container was presented. The courier froze. Asha raised an eyebrow. On what grounds? Carl stepped forward, eyes locked on the box. On the grounds that it's listening. The courier paled. That wasn't disclosed. Carl moved fast. Too fast. His hand struck a precise point along the container's seam. There was a soft click, then a rising whine as the device inside destabilized. Carl grabbed the courier by the collar and shoved him backward. Down, he snapped. The container detonated not outward, but inward, collapsing into itself with a concussive thump that rattled the hall. Silence followed. When the dust cleared, the box was gone. So was the listening device. So was any plausible deniability. Carl straightened slowly, breathing controlled, eyes already scanning for secondary threats. Every guard in the chamber was staring at him. Asha rose from her seat. She walked to his side and placed her hand on his arm. Leave us, she said calmly. No one argued. When they were alone, Asha looked up at him. That strike, she said. That wasn't improvised. Carl didn't pretend it was. Tell me one thing, she said. Just one. He waited. What do people call you, she asked, when you're not pretending to be Carl Lorson? He hesitated just long enough to matter. Then he said, they don't. Asha's grip tightened slightly on his arm. And for the first time, she understood the shape of the danger she had married. Not a weapon, a solution. The first name Carl Lorson lost was not his own. Asha learned this 3 nights later, when she found him in the training gallery that officially did not exist. The gallery lay beneath the eastern wing, accessible only through a service lift whose access codes rotated every 12 hours. It was designed for Imperial blades and Virexi physiology-wide arcs, heavy gravity modulation, weapons grown rather than forge. Carl had reprogrammed it. Asha stood at the threshold, unannounced, and watched. He moved through the space with brutal efficiency, bare-handed against 3 adaptive drones. The gravity was set higher than standard. The drones were tuned for lethal response. Carl did not hurry. He broke one drone's limb and used it to disable another. He let the third strike him deliberately just to close distance. When it overcommitted, he ended it with a single, precise motion that severed power, control, and balance at once. No wasted effort, no flourish. When the last drone fell inert, Carl stood still, breathing slow and even. He did not turn. You've been watching for 93 seconds, he said. Asha stepped into the light. That's not possible, she said. He glanced at the chronometer embedded in the wall. 96, he corrected. I underestimated you. She crossed her arms. You altered Imperial security infrastructure. Yes. You trained in a facility forbidden even to my father. Yes. And you did so without alerting a single system. Yes. Carl met her gaze fully now. I'll accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate. Asha studied him. He was stripped down to a sleeveless undershirt, skin slick with sweat, scars mapping his arms and shoulders like a private history written in pale lines and burn marks. None were ceremonial, none were random. Who trained you? She asked. Carl wiped his hands on a cloth. A program. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give. She circled him slowly. He turned with her, maintaining distance without retreating. Programs have names, she said. Not after they're buried. That stopped her. Buried by whom? By the people they frightened, he replied. Asha halted in front of him. You weren't a diplomat, she said. No. You weren't intelligence. No. You weren't military. No. She tilted her head. Then what were you? Carl's mouth tightened. A contingency. The word echoed. Asha felt the weight of it settle in her bones. Explain, she said. He hesitated then nodded once. Earth learned something, he said. A long time ago. That when civilizations reach a certain level of power, diplomacy stops being enough. Asha said nothing. So they built options, he continued. People who could operate alone. Without support. Without extraction. Without acknowledgement. Assassins, she said. No, Carl said sharply. Problem solvers. He seemed to realize how that sounded and forced his voice back down. We were trained to remove threats that couldn't be negotiated with. Quietly, permanently, without leaving a war behind. Asha folded her arms. How many of you? Carl looked away. Not many, he said. Fewer now. Why you? Because I was forgettable, he said. Because I looked harmless. Because no one expects the man who apologizes to be the one who ends them. The words chilled her. And Carl Lorson? She asked. A name I was given, he said. For this assignment. Assignment, she repeated softly. Yes. To marry me? To protect you, he said immediately. She held his gaze. And my father? Yes. And Virex? Yes. She let the silence stretch. Were you ordered to love me? She asked. Carl startled. What? It's a simple question, she said evenly. No, he said. That was not. He stopped. Something complicated passed over his face. That was not part of the mission. Asha nodded once. That, she said, is the first honest thing you've said that frightens me. An alarm chimed faintly overhead, security realigning. Carl straightened. They're going to notice the energy spike from the drones, he said. We shouldn't be here. Asha didn't move. How many people have you killed? She asked. Carl closed his eyes. Enough, he said. She accepted that. Do you regret it? He opened his eyes again. Every day. And you did again. Yes. She stepped closer. If I order you to kill for me, she said quietly, would you? Carl didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. No. Asha blinked. Explain. I would protect you, he said. I would stop threats. I would end anyone who tried to harm you. That's killing. Yes. But I won't be your weapon, he said. I already belong to too many ghosts. The admission settled between them, heavy and raw. Asha turned toward the exit. Good, she said. Carl frowned. Good? Yes, she said. Because if you were willing to kill on my command. She paused at the doorway and looked back at him. I would never trust you. She left him standing alone in the forbidden gallery, surrounded by the quiet evidence of what he was. Above them, in the palace that believed it had married a harmless man, the game continued. And it was about to learn how wrong it had been. The final attempt began with silence. Not alarms, not explosions, silence where there should have been sound. Asha noticed it first as she walked the western corridor toward the council chamber. The palace had a rhythm she had known since childhood, the distant murmur of courtiers, the whisper of servants, the ever-present hum of living metal adjusting to imperial will. That rhythm was gone. Her guards slowed instinctively. Carl stopped completely. Don't move, he said. Not sharply, gravely. Asha turned her head just enough to see his face. There was no mask left. This is it, he said quietly. They're done probing. The air folded. The first body fell without a sound, one of her guards simply collapsing as a needle-thin filament passed through his skull and dissolved. The second didn't even hit the ground before Carl moved. The corridor became violence. Carl shoved Asha backward into a recessed alcove as the walls themselves split open, panels peeling away to reveal embedded weaponry. Imperial grade, repurposed. Someone had rewritten the palace. Stay down, Carl said, and this time there was no illusion that she might disobey. He stepped into the open. What followed was not a fight. It was a correction. Carl moved like a man who had already seen this future and discarded every version where it went wrong. He used the corridor itself, angles, reflections, pressure shifts. He disarmed one attacker with a broken wrist and killed another without breaking stride. A cloaked figure dropped from the ceiling behind him. Carl didn't turn. He reached back and drove his elbow into a throat with surgical precision. The body hit the floor already dead. Asha watched, frozen not with fear, but with the awful clarity of understanding. This was not skill learned. This was identity. The last assassin hesitated. That was the mistake. Carl crossed the distance in a blink, seized the figure by the collar, and slammed them into the wall hard enough to crack living metal. Who sent you? He asked. The assassin laughed, blood bubbling at their mouth. You think this ends it, Kale? The name hit the corridor like a dropped blade. Carl went still. Asha's breath caught. Wrong answer, Carl said and snapped the assassin's neck. The silence rushed back in, thick and ringing. Carl stood there for a moment longer, shoulders rising and falling once. Then he turned. Asha had never seen him look tired before. She stepped out of the alcove. Kale, she said. He flinched, not from the name, from hearing it in her voice. They weren't supposed to know, he said. Know what? She asked softly. He looked at her, really looked, and something in him finally gave way. The contingency failed, he said. That means Earth is out of time. Guards poured in then, late and horrified. The corridor filled with shouts, with weapons raised, with fear finally catching up. Carl raised his hands automatically. Asha stepped in front of him. Lower your weapons, she said. They hesitated. The Emperor's voice cut through the chaos. Obey. Frection approached, towering, eyes burning as he surveyed the carnage. This was not an internal plot, the Emperor said slowly. No, Carl agreed. It was a coalition. A name. Frection demanded. You wouldn't recognize it, Carl said, but they would have dismantled your empire piece by piece. Quietly. Starting tonight, and you stopped them, Frection said. Carl met the Emperor's gaze. Yes. The Emperor studied him for a long, dangerous moment. Who are you? Carl exhaled. My designation was Kale, he said. I was Earth's final answer to extinction-level diplomacy. Asha felt the weight of it settle. Every instinct she'd had finally snapping into place. You're Kale, she said. The one whispered about in intercepted intelligence. The name that appeared in aftermaths and vanished before blame could be assigned. The master assassin who didn't belong to any faction because he ended them. I was, he said. What changed? She asked. You, he said simply. Silence fell again, this time different. Reverent. Afraid. Frection straightened. You were sent to save us, the Emperor said. Yes. And to spy on us? No. And to control us? No. Frection stepped closer, looming. Then why hide? Kale's voice was steady. Because empires don't sleep beside weapons they can't command. Asha turned to her father. He saved your life, she said. Quote. Again. He saved Virex. Frection looked between them, at his daughter, unbowed, and at the human who had walked into his court pretending to be nothing. Finally, the Emperor spoke. Then rise, he said. Not as consort. Kale stiffened, but as guardian. Frection continued, bound not by command, but by oath. Asha looked at Kale. You said you wouldn't be my weapon, she said. I meant it, he replied. She held out her hand. Then don't be, she said. Be my equal. For the first time since she'd known him, Kale hesitated, not from fear, but from something dangerously close to hope. He took her hand, and across the palace, across the galaxy, plans that had taken decades quietly died. Because the universe had finally realized what Princess Asha of Virex Prime had known all along. They hadn't married a harmless man. They had married the end of assassination itself. The moment the palace quieted, Kale, formerly Carl Lorson, took command. Not of the court, not of the Emperor, of the threat. Asha watched from the observation deck as he activated the comm link hidden in his wrist, its interface appearing only for him. His fingers flew over commands with the fluidity of someone born to it, not trained, bred for it. Earth command, he said, voice low but firm. Target package, coalition cells Gamma through Omega. Authorization, level Kale, immediate neutralization, no collateral. There was a pause. Understood, came the clipped reply. Deploying assets now. And then the hunt began. Across the systems, across borders and empty space corridors where no eyes dared linger, the coalition, the very cabal that had tried to assassinate the Emperor, was struck. Ships that had appeared untouchable evaporated in streaks of white fire. Command centers disintegrated in silent precision. Rogue assassins who had prided themselves on anonymity were intercepted mid-transit. Kale had left nothing to chance. Asha did not see the strikes. She only felt them, the silence, the absence of expected communication, the sudden clarity of safety that hung like a tangible weight. After 3 cycles of the twin suns, the comms blinked again. All targets terminated, coalition dissolved, no survivors outside authorized extractions, reported Earth Command. Kale leaned back, voice quieter now. It's done. No one can threaten Virex or the Emperor's line again, not from that coalition. Asha stepped closer. And you? I stay, he said simply. This galaxy requires more than promises. Her eyes narrowed. You've just unleashed the full force of Earth's clandestine military. Kale's lips twitched. They trust me, because they know what I am and what I will do. Do they know what you've done here? She asked, gesturing to the palace. They will, he said. Eventually, but by then, it won't matter. She studied him, the man who had stumbled awkwardly at her wedding, who had spilled wine, who had looked apologetic and human, was gone. In his place stood Kale, master assassin, architect of planetary-scale surgical strikes, guardian of a throne that few outside the imperial court even believed worth protecting. You saved countless lives, Asha said softly, including mine, and my father's. Yes, Kale replied, and now, anyone who tries again will die before they can even think of striking. She took his hand. It was steady now, unyielding, the hand of someone who had held the line between survival and extinction more times than anyone could count. And yet, she said, you're still here, choosing to stay. Kale's eyes softened just slightly. Because this is where I belong. Not because of duty, not because of orders, but because of you. Asha let out a slow breath, realizing at last the scale of what she had married. Not a diplomat, not a harmless human, a weapon? No, far more dangerous than that. A protector, a ghost, and a man whose name would echo through the galaxy as the one who ended assassination itself. The Empire exhaled with them. But Kale never relaxed. Because the universe was vast, and though one threat had fallen, the next was always waiting. And Kale would be ready. The sun rose over Virex Prime, twin orbs painting the spires of the palace in gold and violet. The court had resumed its routines, though whispers lingered in the corridors, rumors of the coalition's sudden, total destruction, of the human consort who was more than he appeared. Asha walked along the eastern balcony, the crown veil set aside, her hand brushing the ceremonial blade she had held when first meeting Kale. She did not need it now, not for defense but as a reminder of what had been fought for, and what still demanded vigilance. Kale joined her without announcement, moving with silent grace. His uniform was neat, human tailoring adapted for Virexi standards, but his presence carried something beyond clothing: control, danger, and the sense that the galaxy itself would pause if he chose to act. You've been watching the reports, Asha said without turning. I have, Kale replied. His voice was quiet, steady, unshakable. All cells neutralized, coalition eradicated, no loose ends. Asha exhaled. You didn't just save my father. You saved Virex Prime. Earth made sure of that, he said. I simply executed their instructions and kept you alive. She turned to face him fully. Kale, Carl, whoever you are, why stay here? You could return to Earth. You could vanish. His eyes met hers, sharp and unyielding. Because duty doesn't end with orders. And because some promises can't be left behind. Asha stepped closer. And the others you protected? The ones who don't even know your name? Kale's gaze softened for the briefest instant. They won't know, and that's the way it should be. History rewards only the victors and survival favors the quiet. She studied him, the man who had spilled wine, who had tripped across the imperial court, who had seemed helpless and apologetic, was gone. In his place stood a force beyond imagination, a ghost who moved between worlds, an assassin who ended empires before they realized they were at war. And yet, Asha said, voice gentle, you've stayed here, with me. Kale's lips twitched into something resembling a smile. Because some things are worth staying for, he said simply. She reached for his hand. He let her take it, fingers intertwining, steady, unshakable. In that moment, the political arrangements, the alliances, the silent wars across the stars, all of it faded, leaving only two people bound by trust, respect, and a shared understanding of danger. You saved Virex, Kale, she whispered. And you saved me. He squeezed her hand. I will always do both. From the palace spires, the twin suns rose higher, casting long shadows across the city. Somewhere, deep in orbit, Earth's fleets monitored, silent and invisible, knowing their contingency had survived and flourished. Asha looked out over the world, then back at him. The galaxy thinks it knows us, she said. Kale's eyes glinted. It doesn't, and that's exactly how we like it. The Emperor arrived then, silent as the gravity of the palace itself. He studied Kale, then his daughter, and nodded once. You are both exactly what this empire needs, Threction said, and perhaps, more than it deserves. Asha squeezed Kale's hand again. Then we'll make sure it survives. Kale's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. And if it doesn't, I'll still be here. She didn't need to ask what that meant. Because the galaxy now knew one immutable truth. Princess Asha of Virex Prime had not married a harmless man. She had married the end of assassination itself. And Kale, the ghost of Earth's final contingency, would ensure nothing or no one ever threatened her world again. Above the palace, the twin suns shone bright. Below, the Empire breathed, oblivious to just how much had been saved by the quiet, unrelenting presence of a man who never rested, never slept, and never faltered. And for the first time in decades, the Empire felt truly safe. And somewhere, beyond the twin suns, across the endless dark between stars, Kale watched, always awake, always waiting, and the galaxy realized that even in peace, some shadows never sleep. Thank you for listening, and please don't forget to click like and subscribe.